everyone, it's Miss Terry, and I'm here today to talk about my January picks for students in grades 5th through 6th. We'll go through some of the fiction books, then we'll go through graphic novels, and then we'll go through some nonfiction. The first book I want to talk about today is called Not Your All-American Girl. And this is about a girl named Lauren and her best friend Tara. And Lauren is a really good singer, and she decides to try out for the school musical as well as her friend Tara does too. And they're kind of doing a musical kind of about the all-American girl. And Lauren is half Jewish and half Chinese, and everyone says that she rocked her audition, and yet the lead role ended up going to her best friend Tara. And she gets very upset with the director of the play, who tells Lauren flat out, well, Tara kind of seems more all-American with her pale face and curly brown hair. She just says that she's more all-American, and this really bothers Lauren a lot, to the point where she actually stops singing in the chorus because she's so upset. So this is a story about what does it really mean to be all-American, and how do you come forward with your talents and be who you are meant to be when others are trying to put you down. So this is Not Your All-American Girl. Next, we have The Conjurers, Rise of the Shadow. This is the first in the series, and it's about Alex and Emma, two siblings whose parents have disappeared. So they end up going to live with their Uncle Mordo, and he at first is very strict. No TV, no going outside, you need to stay close. They don't really understand exactly what's going on. Luckily, they have their pet rabbit to keep them company. And then one day when Uncle Mordo is gone, these skeletons, flying skeletons, come and terrorize them. And the rabbit springs into action, whisks the two children away, and takes them to a magical land called Conjurian, where animals can talk and magic is real. And he introduces them to the shadow conjurer, who is looking for the Eye of Deity. I want to make sure I get that right. The Eye of Deity that is going to help bring magic back to Conjurian, because things aren't going so well there. And he really wants the siblings to help him. Unfortunately, they don't have any magic that they are aware of. So this is an epic adventure with magic and mythical creatures. If you enjoy things like that, you will enjoy The Conjurer. Next up is The Horse of the River by Sari Cooper. And this is about a girl named Jillian who has been waiting what she feels like her whole life to go away to camp and to have experience with horses one-on-one. So she's very excited to be going off to Canyon Falls Camp, where she's going to spend the week riding horses. Well, she gets there, they're going to go on a week-long trek into the woods, and she gets this beautiful horse named Beauty that she's just thrilled. This is the perfect horse for her. She's very gentle and tame and follows all the directions just right. Well, unfortunately, there's a snobby girl at camp. Her name is Katrina, and she causes an accident that makes Beauty unable to go on this trip. So now Jillian is forced to take another horse, who they've nicknamed the Beast. His name is actually General. He's much more rambunctious. He's not as easy to ride. He doesn't follow directions as well. So Jillian is very nervous about going off into the woods on this trip. And she has a right to be, because at one point, the general gets spooked, and he and Jillian fall into the river and get swept away from the rest of the group, and end up having to spend the night alone in the wilderness, just the two of them. So if you like survival type stories, you'll enjoy that. If you enjoy horse stories, you absolutely will enjoy this. This next one is a basketball story. It's called The Turnover by Mike Lupica. Mike Lupica is known for having a lot of sports action in his stories, but he also has a lot of action that happens off of the court. And this book is no exception. This is about a boy named Lucas, whose dad has passed away, but luckily he has his grandfather, Sam, who kind of steps up and agrees to become the coach of the basketball team. And their team is doing really well. And Lucas is thrilled to have his grandpa be a part of his life. When he gets an assignment in English class to do kind of like a biography of somebody that he knows, he decides to write about his grandpa Sam. But as he starts to dig into his grandpa's past, he realizes that his grandfather has some secrets, and it's kind of changing his view of his grandpa, and he's trying to decide whether or not grandpa is still the best person to be his coach. This is called The Turnover. The Wolf of Cape Fenn is a little bit on the scary side. This is about a girl named Eliza, and she lives on Cape Fenn with her dad and her younger sister Winnie. Their mom has pretty much left them, and Cape Fenn is not your usual island community. After the first frost every year, a witch named Baron Dyer comes back with her very scary wolf, and she makes magical bargains with people. So people ask her to solve their problems, maybe help them leave the island, and she agrees to, but always at a cost, and not always at a cost that they're willing or should be willing to pay. And then when the wolf suddenly attacks Eliza's younger sister, Winnie, Eliza knows Winnie would never have made a deal with the witch, and she realizes that it's very possible that her mom has made a bargain and that Winnie is the cost. So she and her sister set out to set right the wrong that has been done to them. That is the Wolf of Cape Fenn. Again, a little bit on the scary side. But if you kind of like old world fairy tales, you would enjoy it. This next one is the first in a series. It's called The Plot to Kill Hitler is the name of the series, and this one is called Conspiracy. And this is about Greta and Max, and they live in Berlin during World War II, 1943. Right about when Berlin was getting bombed pretty regularly. And one day their neighborhood is bombed and a man comes to the door. He's mortally wounded. He's asking for their father, Karl. And as Karl is trying to save his life, this man is telling him, you need to get a message to the resistance. You need to kill the Fuhrer. He must be stopped. And this is the beginning of what happens when Karl tries to fulfill that mission with Greta and Max as his helpers. That's called Conspiracy is the first one. This next one is a choose your own adventure. It's Could You Survive the New Stone Age? And this is about a group of kids who goes to the Natural History Museum. They end up touching something they shouldn't, and they get transported back to the Stone Age. Now there are 43 choices in this book, so you read for a little bit, make a choice, and then continue. And there are 20 different endings. So you can read this book over and over, making different choices, and try to survive the Stone Age. This next one is not a new one. This one is called A Royal Guide to Monster Slaying, but I wanted to bring it up again because the second one has just come out, The Griffin's Lair. And if you kind of like that mythology type story, you really are going to enjoy this. This is about twins, Rowan and Rid, who live in a kingdom where the oldest and they happen to be a part of the royal family, and the oldest, who is Rowan, is a girl, and she is next in line for the throne. But what she really wants to be is a monster slayer. Unfortunately, her brother Rid, because he was born second, gets to go into the academy to learn how to be a monster slayer, even though he probably would rather be king. So this is the story about these twins and how they're going to come to terms with their place in their world, but there's also a lot of really great mythical creatures and monsters that they have to come up against. And then the last fiction, oh no, I have two more, sorry about that. This one is called Never After, and this is about a girl named Philomena. And she is in love with this book series about Never After, which is a fairy tale land full of magic and all the stories that you know and love. And she is anxiously awaiting the 13th book in the series. She's walking home from school one day when Jack the Giant Slayer suddenly appears and tells Philomena that everything in the story is true. And he whisks her away to the land of Never After in the hopes of saving that world, full of all your favorite fairy tale characters. If you enjoy the land of stories, you also would enjoy that. Okay, so the last fiction one is called Milo Moss is Officially Unamazing. And Milo's family, his mom and dad especially, are obsessed with setting a Guinness Book of World Records. They have all of this this detriment of all the ones that they've tried to do, like piles of toilet paper and the start of a big rubber band ball. And they're just constantly on this quest to enter into the Guinness Book of World Records, and Milo's totally on board. He's trying it out as well, but he ends up getting into some trouble at school. He gets into some trouble with his friends, and he discovers that maybe this is not a worthy goal for them. If you like stories like Big Nate and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, you will definitely like Milo, because he kind of is one of those. He tries to do good, but things don't always work out the way that he would like. This is definitely on the funny side. So that's Milo Moss is Officially Unamazing. So those are the fiction stories. Let's talk about some of the graphic novels. This first one is called Animorphs, the graphic novel, and the first one is called The Invasion. Hopefully this is the beginning of a series. This is actually a graphic novel version of an older book series that came out quite a while ago, but now they're making a graphic novel version of it, and I'm very excited about that. This is about Jake and 5 of his friends, and one day they're coming out of the mall and they see this strange light in the sky. Well, it's actually a spaceship. And on it is an alien who unfortunately is mortally wounded and is dying. And he tells the kids about an invading alien force called the Yeerks. And the scary part is they already are on Earth, and they actually inhabit the bodies of the planet's inhabitants. So they're inside different human beings, and you can't always find out who they are until it's probably too late. But so this alien gives these kids the ability to change into the most dangerous creatures on the planet, like a tiger or a lion, and they are going to use that power to hopefully defeat the Yeerks and take back Earth. So that's Animorphs. I think if you enjoy TV shows like Stranger Things, you might enjoy this as well. Max Meow Cat Crusader is the story about Max. I'm trying to think of the book, Dogman. If you like Dogman, you probably will enjoy Max. And he has a friend named Mindy who has a secret lab, and he's fooling around in the lab one day when he comes in contact with a radioactive meatball that turns him into the Cat Crusader, and he has to save Kittyopolis from the dangers that are against it. This is definitely on the silly side. He does have some friend issues as Mindy gets very angry at him because he kind of gets all like, ooh, I'm a Cat Crusader, I'm the best thing on the planet, and she's gonna have to knock him down a peg. But if you like superhero adventures with kind of an unlikely hero, you will enjoy Max Meow. Lightfall is a really good read alike if you enjoy the Amulet series, or if you kind of are a Star Wars fan. And this is about a girl named Bee, and Bee's parents are gone, and so she lives with her grandpa, who he's kind of, well, he's actually a pig, but he's the wise pig. He has a lot of knowledge, and he's the keeper of the eternal flame, and he has taught Bee how to take care of this flame as well. But one day he sends her out into the forest to gather some ingredients for a spell that he is working on. And there she meets Cad, who appears to be the last of an extinct race called the Galdurians. And it just so happens that he was on his way to see Bee's grandpa. So she agrees to take him back through the forest to her grandpa's cottage. And when they get there, they discover that grandpa is gone. And he's taken a whole bunch of things with him and has left the eternal flame in Bee's keeping. Well, Bee is freaking out. She wants to know what happened to her grandpa, and Cad has agreed to help her find him. So this is definitely an action-packed space adventure. They start on one planet and then they go to others and in search of Bee's grandpa. So that's called Lightfall. And again, it's a graphic novel, just in case you aren't sure what I mean by graphic novel. Excellent illustrations in here. Doodleville is the story of a girl named Drew, which is very appropriate because Drew likes to draw, and her doodles are unique in the sense that they come to life, and she is able to draw whatever she'd like. Well, trying to keep them kind of contained, she's created this whole world called Doodleville that she tries to keep her illustrations inside of. And one day she draws a dragon named Levi. Well, Levi starts to cause a lot of trouble, and she realizes that maybe Levi is more of a monster than he is a friendly little doodle. And this is the story of what happens in Doodleville when the monster is unleashed. Not Enough is a really good read-alike if you enjoy books by like Smile and Guts. This is a story about Nat, and Nat and her best friend Lily are just about to start middle school when Lily announces that Nat is not cool enough for her anymore. And so Nat is starting middle school. She feels like friendless. She doesn't really know what to do, and she tries all these different kind of schemes to try to get Lily back, to try to get Lily to notice her, to try to get her to think that she's enough for her. And while she's doing that, she kind of discovers her own hidden talents and starts to make some new friends, so that by the end of the book, she's kind of like, do I even need Lily as a friend anymore? So this is called Nat Enough. And then the last graphic novel I'm going to talk about, this one is called Jackie Ha Ha. It is by James Patterson. This is also based on a non-graphic novel series called Jackie Haha. And this is about Jackie. She is the fourth of 6 sisters, so sometimes she feels a little lost in her large family, and she has a tendency to be the class clown. And she's starting a new grade, and she's like, this year it's going to be different. I'm just going to be me. Doesn't really work out for her though. Before she know it, she is kind of getting herself into trouble because she's always making jokes. And this is the story of how she kind of realizes what is important. So that's Jackie Haha. This is another good read alike if you enjoy Smile and things like that. So those are the graphic novels. Let's talk a little bit about nonfiction. This one is called The Forgotten Fairy Tales of Brave and Brilliant Girls. And while technically the stories themselves are fiction, it's still considered in the nonfiction because they are fairy tales. And these are the stories that the Brothers Grimm have left out. I mean, there are certain fairy tales that we have all heard about, you know, Cinderella, the 3 Little Pigs, and all of those different stories. Well, these are the ones that the Brothers Grimm did not put in their collection. So they are actual fairy tales from long ago, but most of them really have that girl power. And sometimes it's not the prince who rescues the princess, but it's the other way around. So this is a collection of different short stories that are fairy tales. This next one is part of a National Geographic, which always has the best photographs. This one is called Solve This Forensics, and this looks at crime scene investigation, and it gives you a scenario, a crime that has occurred. It gives you the suspects, it gives you the evidence that has been left behind, but then it talks about the science behind the evidence, like how do they use fingerprints to determine who the suspect is? How do they do blood analysis? And then you have to try to solve the mystery, and then they'll give you the answer and why at the end. So there's several different ways that you can learn about crime scene investigation. And this one's kind of fun because it's kind of a puzzle book as well. The Brown Lady is definitely in the horror genre, and the Brown Lady is a ghostly woman in a brown dress who roams the halls of a 400-year-old mansion in Norfolk, England. Many believe the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall is the spirit of Lady Dorothy Walpole, wife of Charles Townshend. According to legend, Charles became upset with Dorothy and locked her inside the hall until she died. To this day, her ghost still wanders the home. So this talks about modern day people's experiences with the Brown Lady and why they think she is a ghost at the hall, but then it also talks about other famous ghosts around the world. So if you like ghost stories, you'll definitely enjoy this. History Smashers is a new series. This one is called Women's Right to Vote. Now we all think, when we think women's right to vote, sometimes we think Susan B. Anthony and she won the vote. That's not exactly how it happened. It actually was many, many years before women deserved the right to vote. And this book kind of looks at our common misconceptions of women's right movement and what actually happened. And it's written in a very pleasing graphic format that I think you will enjoy if you enjoy history, especially if you're all about women's rights. This next one is kind of a big one. It's called The Secret Life of Spies. And what I like about this is it's an informational book about spies. So it talks about all of the things that spies need to do their jobs. And then in between that, they have real life stories of real life spies and what they've done for different countries. But it has all of the vocabulary and all of the things that if you're possibly thinking that someday, hey, that would actually be a really neat job to work for the CIA and become a spy, this will give you a really good idea of what that job entails. This next one is called Pretty Tricky and is the sneaky ways that plants survive. And this book looks at a whole bunch of different plants and the way that they trick other animals into eating them or not eating them, or spreading their pollen so that they can continue to grow. It's got great illustrations, and I learned some things that I didn't even know. For example, the snapdragon plant, it only likes big fat bumblebees. So they've made it so only the weight of a bumblebee will open up the snapdragon so that it can get the pollen out and go pollinate another plant, so that the snapdragon can continue to grow. It won't even open up for tiny insects who just want the nectar but don't actually help out the plant. So a very fascinating look at plants. It kind of makes you feel like, do I really want to be in the forest amongst all these green things? What's going to get me? Pretty tricky. And then the last one I have with me today is called How to Draw Manga. This is a step-by-step, very simplified drawing book about drawing manga. So if you're really interested in this art type, this is a good choice for you. So like it'll have a heading, you know, figure 4 is the shy girl, and it gives you some different ways, step by step, that you can draw that type of figure. Smiley person, somebody who's unhappy, yeah. And it just gives you, I kind of feel like relatively easy instructions. Like maybe I could try to draw like that. So that's how to draw manga. Thanks so much.